Muchas gracias. I think that is very, very concise and very brief, so that helps me a lot to save a little bit of time. So you see the role of chambers is a very important one in the tripartite cooperation between the companies, the trainees themselves, and of course then the chambers, which play actually a very important role in, for example, matching the demands and the requirements, also being the interlocutors of the labor market decision makers. So thank you very much for that. I think that everybody knew that. And I think it's also important to have noted that AC4SME project of the Euro Chambers, with whom Panos knows that we are also cooperating as EVBB in Brussels. They're also our partners there. So now you have the floor. If you have any questions to Fernando, please do so. I see that everybody is happy and has no more questions. So
waiting for the coffee break.
Exactly, but we still have 2 more speakers to go before we go for the coffee break. Thanks again very much. And now then we pass on to Charles Arensen, who is actually French, English and Norwegian speaking. No, Greek, I don't know, whatever, multilingual. And Charles, he will actually also talk about the role of the chambers. So. Maybe we just go on like this, because otherwise we lose too much time. Charles, you have the floor now.
I already lost 5 minutes. Kalimera, honorable and distinguished. Somebody's calling you. Excuse me? Sorry about this. View full screen? It's okay. It's okay. Forget it. Bye.
That makes the digital very human, that we sometimes encounter these problems. Okay, now Charles, go on, please.
So, honorable and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, I'm so glad to be back in beautiful Greece, country and people dear to my heart. which I visited many times, most delicious moments spent, but quite always too far short in time. Nevertheless, my utmost pleasure is to again meet Greek friends, new friends, and in particular my esteemed Panos Melios, whom I sincerely wish to congratulate for the achievement of 40 years of passionate work dedicated to education and vocational training. And it goes without saying, dear Panos, but I will say it anyway, your constant devotion to serve people who in many circumstances are in need of knowledge and professional knowledge learning is an example of what I would call a fraternal priesthood committed to the better well-being of mankind. Yes, Panos, you are indeed one of a kind, and the celebration and warm gathering yesterday evening was the proof. So, to make a story short, I served the Chamber of Commerce and Industry for some 20 of Marseille-Provence for some 20 years, and when reaching the age limit of 65, I was invited to officially retire. So since January 2016, I returned to the private sector as an international business consultant, targeting SMEs in their development phase. I still share part of my time on EU funds, partnerships, and proposals, but I must admit that is not my specialty. I will anyway try to give you a close look at the role of French chambers in the development of vocational training policies, title of my paper I'm presenting here today. So, this is the summary. Will be an overlook at France, the famous French labor code, the role of French CCIs, or chambers of commerce, and a look at the regional level of Provence, PACA, and Alpes, Côte d'Azur level. So the French population accounts approximately 66 million persons, of whom close to 30 million, or 45%, are considered active. The unemployment rate representing 2.8 million persons, which is equal to 9.5%, out of which not less than 60% are workers and employees with no or very low qualification. But unemployment does not mean no work in the market. The demand for skilled, trained workforce is there, for example, in the metal industry in France. In 2014, France spent on vocational training and apprenticeship 31.6 billion euros, enabling 24.4 million trainees to be trained. Enterprises remain the main financer for vocational training and apprenticeship, with a contribution of 14 billion euros. While the financial effort of both the state and the regions is noticeably decreasing. In fact, in relation to GDP, the effort on training is 1.48% compared to 1.6% 8 years back. Amongst the 2.8 million unemployed, only 644,000 persons, or 23% of them, benefited from qualifying training during an average period of 4.7 months, while internships, more focused on meeting the immediate needs of the business community, averaged 2.7 months. In 2015, the most selected courses by the enterprises, both private and public, concerned foreign languages, 20%, followed by safety and quality, 19%, personal development and professional efficiency, 9%, operational management and leadership, 9%, IT, 8%, etc. This cartoon, I don't know if you can see it right, but anyway, this cartoon is a criticism concerning short training courses which are considered as dusting instead of qualifying, and also because they cost less. But the challenge set today by the government of recently elected Emmanuel Macron is not to spend more, but to focus more resources on those who need them most. That's one of the main reasons that Macron immediately decided to tackle the reform of the mighty French labor code, le Code du Travail. To briefly depict the French labor code, I refer to an article written by American journalist Alan Nossiter of the New York Times on August 4th this year, which he titled, "Macron Takes France's Labor Code 100 Years in the Making." Quote, "It is a mind-numbing 3,324 pages long and growing. Of those, 170 pages govern firings, 420 regulate health and security, 50 temporary work, 85 collective negotiations, and hundreds more are devoted to wages, specific industries, and overseas territories. It is France's infamous, most indecipherable code, the Code du Commerce, both revered and reviled. Unions hold its protection sacred, while employers blame it for making it expensive to hire new workers and difficult and even more costly to fire them. France's energetic young president-elect Emmanuel Macron has made lightening the code, a touchstone of French economic life for over a century, the centerpiece of his promise to revitalize the economy," unquote. So the French Code du Travail is divided in 8 parts. And as from Part 6, Volume 3, Title 2, Chapter 3, Section 1, we find the articles referring to long life vocational training, which I will not go into details. But firstly, lifelong vocational learning is a national obligation. Equal access between women and men, equal access for disabled and assimilated persons, actions to combat illiteracy and to promote the learning of the French language are also part of the lifelong vocational training obligations. Lifelong vocational learning aims at enabling every person, irrespective of his or her status, to acquire and to update knowledge and skills contributing to his or her professional development and to attain at least one level of qualification during his or her professional life. It is a decisive element in securing career paths and promoting employees. A coordinated national strategy is defined and implemented by the state, the regions, and the social partners. This strategy is implemented in each region within the framework of a regional committee for employment, vocational training, and guidance. It takes into account initial training, including apprenticeship and further training, which constitute continuous or lifelong vocational training for adults and young people, whether already active or recently entered in the labor market. In addition, every person engaged in working life has the right to have his or her experience acknowledged, in particular professional experience or trade union responsibilities. In order to facilitate access to lifelong vocational learning or training, every person receives a personal training account, valid for his or her employment to retirement, in view of developing his or her skills and competences from training, and any other devices to which the beneficiary may be entitled to can come into addition to this account. Now, in practice, in 2004 was created a droit individuel à la formation, a DIF, which is the individual right to training, a device designed and managed by the employers to allow employees in the private sector, then 3 years later, also in the public sector, to follow continuous training. This scheme was removed in January 2015 and replaced by the CPF, Compte Personnel de Formation, which is a personal training account, which remains active throughout the beneficiary's career until retirement, no longer correlated with its status or contract type, fixed term or permanent time. It is aimed at both employees and job seekers. The allocation of a training hours quota is based on the actual duration of the work, whether part or full-time, and the number of training hours are thus giving access to listed training sessions and acquired qualification, certification, etc. Now, the novelty of the personal training account, the CPF, in relation to the former individual right to training, the DIF, lies in the durability of training credits earned by the employee, regardless if he or she works or has worked in the public service and or in the private service sector, and or is or has gone through a period of unemployment. And effective January this year, we have now the CPA, le Compte Personnel d'Activité, which is a personal activity account, has become the common tool to assist active persons in the building of their career path. The CPA, the personal activity account with secured online access, includes 3 measures. The personal training account, CPF, which we just mentioned. Secondly, the citizen commitment account, the CEC, for specific volunteering work or activity opening up to a right to training. And thirdly, I would call it a hardship prevention account, a CPP, for those exposed to particular risks during their professional activity, for example, weight handling, night work, noisy or chemical environments, etc., and the credits gained are freely converted into training, part-time work, or early retirement. However, the personal activity account is not limited to training. One has also the right to use the account to be accompanied in a personal business creation, for example, or business buyout project, which would potentially increase by 15% the chances of survival of any enterprise beyond 5 years of existence. The aim of the personal activity account is to make vocational training a tool for continuity in the acquisition of knowledge and skills. The CPA gives the right of entry to a training capital for all young graduates of the education system without diploma. Qualified individuals will receive a training supplement. It expands the personal training account to all sorts of activities. Another example, one can freely choose to take lessons for a driver's permit, and regardless if it is useful professionally or not. So when we know that 60% of job seekers, as indicated previously, have a knowledge level below the French baccalaureate, which is the end of the secondary school, obviously professional training is a crucial point in the fight against unemployment. It should bridge the skills gap by helping the less trained to gain capability. But still today, we saw that vocational training in France benefits more to those who are most trained in the context of lifelong vocational training than to those who need it most. So by creating the personal training account, the reform of 2014 on vocational training was indeed very important. But the personal activity account now allows to go steps further ahead. I think So back to the Code du Travail, there's still an article regarding lifelong vocational guidance. It states that everyone is entitled to be informed, advised, and coached in matters of vocational guidance by virtue of the right to education guaranteed by the Education Code. The Public Lifelong Guidance Service ensures that everyone has access to free, complete, and objective information on the trades, training, certification, outlets, and remuneration levels, access to qualified guidance service organized in networks. It contributes to the professional mix by fighting gender stereotypes. The state and the regions ensure the public lifelong guidance service. The state defines the national orientation policy of pupils and students in schools and institutions of higher education, while the regions coordinate the actions of other bodies involved in the regional public guidance service, as well as the setting up of professional advice, providing information, and establishing a network of advisory centers on the validation of acquired experience. Consular organizations, that is to say chambers of commerce, industry, agriculture, and handcraft, participate as well in the regional public guidance service. So the role of French chambers. French chambers, it's not the same in all the European countries, are public entities governed by the Code of Commerce, which specify they each have in their capacity as the intermediate body of the state a function of representing the interest of industry, commerce, and services to the public authorities, and so on. And each chamber, to make it short, can carry out a mission in favor of initial or continuous professional training, thanks in particular to public and private educational systems, institutions that it creates, manages, or finances. So the French Chamber Network, Chamber of Commerce and Industry Network, CCI France, employs 20,000 persons in 107 territorial and 18 regional chambers. And there are globally 500 training centers and 120 schools. Per annum, 500,000 active adults and youths are trained, 100,000 students, 80,000 apprentices in 142 dedicated centres de formation des adultes, which is in the adult training centers. And their main fields are trade and sales, agri-food and food cooking, industry, hairdressing, beautician, health, home services, hotel, restaurants. Those are I would say, the main fields. CCI France network delivers 170 different recognized certificates or diplomas for specific courses co-constructed with the public authorities. And in terms of lifelong vocational training, CCI France network ranks second after the National Education and Higher Education and Research. There are 180 lifelong vocational training centers, from which 19.7 million trainees are trained each year, 74% of which are company employees and 10% job seekers. This amounts to some 302 million training hours per year, mainly, of course, in the trades, trade and sales, business management, transport and logistics, and foreign languages. It is interesting also to mention that CCI France is one of the leading 3 French Erasmus program scholarships bearer in the European apprenticeship and mobility. Also, 124 full-time equivalent experts in human resource coaching have assisted some 13,000 enterprises in setting up or correcting their internal human resources policies. So chambers at regional level, in Provence, Côte d'Azur, there's one regional chamber and 7 territorial chambers. In Provence, Alpes-Côte d'Azur, there are 23 chamber-operated training centers spread in 15 cities. 3 higher business schools, about 15,000 students. 1 higher business school in sports, this is very recently signed. And in total, some almost 16,000 people trained, out of which 6,636 in lifelong vocational training. However, the context in lifelong vocational training is changing. It has become a highly competitive market with digitization issues and a scarcity of funding. The law of March 2014 on vocational training, employment, and social democracy has completed the decentralization process related to vocational training, whereby the competence is now entrusted to the regions. Each region has since introduced quadripartism in the governance of employment policies, training, and orientation, that is to say, the state, the region, the professional representatives, and the trade union organizations in the national and interprofessional levels. This same law has created the previously mentioned personal training account, has also pushed enterprises to change from the obligation to finance training to an obligation to train. It also has introduced a specific quality provisions for vocational training in a quality decree. Also, funds are refocused towards skills training.
Sorry, Charles, you have to hurry up a little bit.
Okay.
We run out of time.
I'm running out of time, sorry. So, maybe we can go to... Well, I can just briefly mention that what are the main assets of the chambers. Of course, vocational training centers are located nationwide. The ability of chambers to integrate vocational training in a value chain from diagnosis to certification, the capacity to respond to specific training needs of companies in relation to requested complementary certificates of the national education diplomas, validation of experience, etc. And chambers are still recognized as qualified certifying bodies. French chambers are readily positioned in so-called mandatory and regulatory training, such as in beverage distribution, hygiene and food safety, real estate, and so on, which is a real opportunity, this being usually the first item of expenditure of companies in terms of training, and mostly committed by very small SMEs who hardly have any training policy. Now we'll go to the last, So the expected priority actions for the regional training first would be to create an umbrella, a common slogan promoting the network of the PACA chambers in lifelong vocational training institutions. Also to improve the efficiency of PACA chambers training offer by a quality labeling process of respective training centers, as well as to improve internal reactivity to calls for tenders, and also conduct digital pilot actions, which one is undergoing right now, which is called CCI Store, its learning management systems, etc. So, thank you very much.